So, with all of that in mind, how can we reshape a system geared towards traditional learners? I'm going to shape some ideas now around what a proactive approach could look like, focusing on a model of prevention over cure with learning skills. And this is in no way replaces the need to be reactive and provide more complex support for students with more complex needs. Instead, I'm wondering how we can support the new majority learners from the get-go on their learning journey. So I'm going to focus on this theme of prevention versus cure. And when I first used this term, what came to mind was the illness wellness continuum adopted by public health. Though in an education setting, it would call for different language. That's what's on this diagram here. It is somewhat one-dimensional, but it shows that the spectrum of wellness, and crucially, these in the neutral group, show that there are no symptoms are still a cause of concern. So I use this at the risk of oversimplifying the student's experience here. For example, having a barrier to your learning, like a learning disability, is not the reason your learning might be in poor health. The lack of appropriate support is not being equipped and empowered and encouraged to tackle that problem yourself is what puts you in a poorer position. So, what this continuum suggests for me is a need to equip, empower, and encourage students with embedded systems that improve their learning well-being as a whole and approach student success as a continuum. So, simplified, proactive support makes sure that your systems don't overlook the students caught in the liminal neutral space in the middle, who are ultimately not succeeding as they could and could quickly start to feel the pain of the barriers they face. Many new majority learners arrive in this neutral space and find themselves quickly facing barriers to their learning they hadn't anticipated. And there are already student success initiatives that align with this that I'm not going to talk about. So, early warning systems with predictive analytics, proactive or intrusive advising, universal design for learning, which addresses the learning environment itself. What I want to concentrate on for this next part is actually specifically what proactive support for the act of learning looks like in this neutral space for these students who are on this continuum, who aren't actively talking about symptoms of barriers or issues, but are ultimately also not achieving what they could. And it's to encourage better learning practices. So I'd argue that we need to teach effective study skills as part of a core curriculum. So many students have never learned evidence-based strategies like spaced repetition, active recall, and interleaved practice. And teaching these explicitly gives them lifelong tools for learning, which are really important, not just as part of their studies, but then further into their employability and lifelong learning in the workplace. This is then partnered with recommending effective tools to remove common learning barriers to using those skills. So, tools that can help capture information in the moment in the classroom, that can then help with time management, understanding how to look at tasks and schedule work that needs to be done, and also sort of active learning platforms that help with retention and recall. These both study skills and then effective tools help to focus on equipping students to improve their learning wellness as a whole and ultimately foster independence, not dependence. And for me, this is the measure of what effective support is. It's how well students eventually succeed without direct help, especially in that liminal neutral space. But both study skills support and the provision of tools, especially a tech-first approach, need to utilize learning science effectively within support practices and especially in embedding AI. And this involves understanding the role of the friction architect in learning. And that's what I'm going to spend some time now zooming in on to understand, what is the friction architect? How can you use this language in student success and with students to explain how they can be better equipped, empowered, and encouraged?